Hello from Tikvah. I'm Meir Soloveichik, and I'm particularly honored today to be joined as part of our series of conversations on what Jerusalem means to me by my former boss from when I was privileged to serve on the State Department's Commission on Unalienable Human Rights, former Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for speaking with me today.
It's great to be here, and you should know the work that you did there on the Human Rights Commission was important and lovely and still having an impact on the world. So bless you for all of that hard work.
Thank you. It was my privilege, and the commission truly is a testament to your vision. So for our conversation, maybe we'll just begin by you describing some of your own experiences in Jerusalem and how that impacted you.
You know, the first time I truly encountered the nation of Israel was as a cadet when I was being taught military history, and we studied the 1967 and 1973 wars. We were being taught them from a military perspective, but when you began to read, and these conflicts were in and around Jerusalem, and Jerusalem was at the center of much of the conflict, there was a much deeper meaning that I only began to have taken on when I was, 19, 20 years old, whatever I would have been. I then had the chance to go visit the first time when I was running a machine shop in Wichita, Kansas, and I had as a customer Israeli aircraft industries. So I had the occasion to travel to Israel and was able to
before you were in Congress, in other words.
Oh, this was long before. This was 20 years ago now. It would have been 2000 perhaps, or 2001. And then I had the chance to take my family there a couple years later to go actually spend time visiting the Christian religious sites, the Jewish history there as well. So it has been something that has been part of my life for a long time. And no reader of the Bible who understands the words that are written there can ever underestimate the importance of that particular place, that historic, factually important place that is known as the City of Peace of Jerusalem.
So you've already referenced both the wonders that occurred around Jerusalem in the years 1948, 1967. You've also thereby referenced the great conflicts that have surrounded the city that is also, as you described, the City of Peace. So I'm wondering, particularly interested actually in your perspective, both as a man of faith, but also as someone who served in significant national security positions, head of the CIA, as well as Secretary of State. What do you make of the obsession that the world has with Jerusalem? Sometimes that obsession can be good for Jerusalem. Sometimes it could be very bad for Jerusalem. But the obsession is there now, and it's been there for generations. So how do you see that from your own both religious and strategic perspective, I guess?
Well, goodness, as a religious matter, I'm obsessed by it too. This is where Jesus will return, according to my faith. This is where he came and was crucified. And it is important to Jewish history as well, deeply important to the Muslim faith, right? It's one of the great centers for the Muslim faith as well. So all three Abrahamic religions, these traditions and faiths, view that place as central to their understanding of their own faith. And so it doesn't surprise me that people would want to go there, to worship there, to touch the place with so much history. I've had the incredible opportunity to go there now so many times, sometimes for work, talking about things difficult and strategic, but often to just walk and to be absorbed in that place and get a chance to meet the people of that place. And you can't, there's no way, Rabbi, there's no way you can go to that place and not understand that this is the rightful homeland of the Jewish people. The artifacts, the history, they are unmistakable. I had the chance to go to Hebron a few months ago, where I'd never been. Hard to get to, but I was able to go and stand next to the tomb of Abraham and Sarah. This is unmistakable. This is right out of the good book.
Yes. And, actually, this is not really Jerusalem related, but I would be remiss if I didn't congratulate you Mr. Secretary, on having a wine from the Holy Land named after you. I mean, I've
Oh,
enjoyed some Sagot Pompeo myself.
it's
So it's not, I don't think it grows in Jerusalem, but still, I
just
don't have a wine named after me. So
it's really quite humbling. It's funny because what I think the cause for that wine having been named after me was the simple recognition of history. That Judea and Samaria are rightful historic homeland of Jewish
right.
people, and that not every Jewish person there is living in an unlawful settlement, right? Just a simple, elemental, realist statement. And people have been so kind for me for having done that. It did upend a lot of American foreign policy for sure. But I do want to go back to this place. Yeah. It's also been a place of terrible conflict. Many have lost their lives. Right. Wars fought along the 67 line. Still to this day, terror being inflicted from the Palestinian Authority in that place as well. It saddens me, but it also reminds me of the work that each of us has to do to keep the people that are living in that place, Christians, Jews, people of no faith, Muslims, all living in Israel, the one place in the Middle East where people of every faith have often lived alongside each other in wonderfully ordinary ways, practice their faith. We have a responsibility to get the security issues right there as well and make sure that the people that live there can, in fact, live their lives, govern themselves with the consent of the authorities, and then practice their faith in ways that they so desire.
So to your reference to getting the national security issues right, that leads to the next question I wanted to raise. The administration in which you served in a major moment in the history of Israel, certainly, oversaw the moving of the American embassy to Jerusalem. And when that decision was announced, there were many quote unquote experts who were certain that the administration was getting this national security issue very wrong. And we heard all sorts of dire predictions of the conflagration that would engulf the entire Middle East over the movement of this embassy. Of course, that didn't happen. So I'd love your thoughts on why the moving of the embassy is important, and what does the fact that these dire predictions failed to be realized tell us about, I guess, expertise, quote unquote, in the Middle East, in Middle East policy?
Those are two very good questions. Look, it was important to do because Israel had declared this as its capital. In nearly every other country, whatever the host nation gets to decide where the American embassy shall be. That is, it's almost always in that nation's capital. And so this was pretty, as a practical matter, pretty straightforward. As a legal matter, required from 1995 forward. Right. And yet, for the reasons that you suggest, Republican, Democrat presidents alike said, "Nah, I'm not going to take the risk of doing the right thing." And if there's one thing I'm proud of from the 4 years, is that I worked for a president who was prepared when it was right to not be reckless, but to get it right. And this decision, President Trump's decision to move the embassy, was just the simple, right, decent decision to do, to recognize Jerusalem as the rightful capital of the Jewish people there in Israel. To your point about expertise, yep, there were lots of folks who fretted about this for decades and said, "No, goodness, you can't do this. There will be chaos. People will rise up in the streets." Right. We were mindful of this risk. We did our work to prepare to mitigate this risk. So the president didn't do this on his first day in office. We did a little work to try and set the stage. We also had come to understand, and frankly, along with our friends in Israel, had built out what I think was a pretty simple defense of our decision, which I think helped Arab leaders. I think it helped Arab leaders acknowledge that the Palestinian Authority, in fact, has no interest in peace. And once this was demonstrably true, as time had moved on and that became clear, then I think they knew that the risk of the embassy move was lower. And so they didn't fight it in the same way that they might have 10 or 20 or 30 years before that as well.
So the groundwork was laid, in other words, with them in advance.
I think that's right. I also think we did nice work about communicating how we were going to do it, why we were going to do it. And Rabbi Meir, you should know, I always believe that you win the argument first. And then when you win the argument, when you make the case in a way that is kind and joyous and decent, then a lot of the risk becomes mitigated. And then finally, we were prepared to. Our embassies, I was the CIA director at the time. Our teams around the world were prepared. We'd done the right things, that in the event that someone attacked our embassy in Islamabad or in Jakarta or some Muslim nation around the world, we were prepared to keep those facilities secure. And in the event, we were blessed. The Lord was watching over it, and I think He seconded the motion. I think He knew this was the right thing, and for that reason, there was relative calm that day, and a good thing, and relative calm since as a result of that.
It is striking, though, when you think about the failed expertise in this matter, and then you join it with another incredible foreign policy achievement under your watch, which is the Abraham Accords, where we had heard as well from experts, including, predecessors of yours in your office, that peace could not be established with other Arab countries without solving, as it were, all the conflicts surrounding Jerusalem and Judea and Samaria and so forth. The consensus was challenged with both of those, and leads me to wonder what else is there that can be overcome, and maybe there's other settled wisdom that can overcome, and maybe the two could be combined, that we could see greater acceptance in the larger Middle East of the Jewish connection to Jerusalem. So maybe these two achievements can merge, as it were.
I absolutely think that's the case. I think this is, goodness knows, I think this is as inevitable as the sun coming up, that the synthesis will begin to happen. You can see it. The Abraham Accords were so lovely, and I use that word very intentionally. They were biblically, historically grounded, security based, and made life better for the people in every nation that joined the Abraham Accords. Those are the things that all came together. That none of them happened without amazing leaders: Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Trump, the Crown Prince in the Emirates, the leadership in Bahrain, even the Crown Prince in Saudi Arabia, although they didn't ultimately sign the Abraham Accords. All could see that this demonstrably reduced risk in the region and would make life better for their own people. And it took those remarkable leaders to come along. God put them there. I am convinced of it, for that moment when we could take four nations that had, it's hard to remember, that had as a central tenet of their foreign policy the destruction, the wiping off the face of the earth, the nation of Israel, and they said, no, we're gonna recognize this as the rightful homeland of the Jewish people. That is a pretty remarkable turn of events. And now today you can see commerce taking place, air flights taking place from Dubai to Tel Aviv, Jaffa, in ways that, 10 years ago, no one would have expected.
It's exactly the same, Mr. Secretary. I'll add, there was just a wedding from a rabbi it sounds crazy. I'm even stringing these words together. There was a rabbi in Dubai who just got married, and there were these videos of his wedding, and you see Emiratis in Arab garb, traditional Arab garb, dancing with this Hasidic rabbi in his traditional Hasidic garb at his wedding in the United Arab Emirates. And, if you had showed this to me, I don't know, 10 years ago, I would have thought that it was photoshopped or made for a movie, for fiction. So it's heartening.
It's incredibly heartening. And I do want to get to your bigger point, which is sometimes the experts get it wrong. Or sometimes perhaps a better way to say it is that the sell-by date on some judgments has been reached, and we just simply don't know it. And I think that's potentially what happened here. And so a combination of determined leaders who are prepared to move out from that and take what is uncertainty to some degree, because you are traveling a path that's not been traveled before. But when you know it is the right thing to do and you have prepared for it, then you can mitigate many of the risks that people have often used as an excuse not to be friends, not to align yourselves together. You have Emirati airplanes and Israeli airplanes flying together. I mean,
It's
this is,
incredible.
you talked about that wedding. These are historic. The world's not going to permit this to go back. I'm convinced of it.
Right.
Largely because I think people in the region can now see that this is better for them. And so I pray that it is so. And I hope that the expansion of the nations that come to recognize Israel will be like that one-way ratchet and only continue to increase.
Yeah, agreed, 100%. So as you know, this conversation and the series of conversations are being held in celebration, as it were, of our new series, which we're launching, Tikvah, Jerusalem 365, which is telling the entire 4,000-year history of Jerusalem in a year. Why do you think studying the history of Jerusalem is important, and what would you hope that someone would get out of such a series?
Well, goodness, I think any faithful believer, it's really important to understand this place. It and the region around it are central to my faith. That very first trip I was telling you about, I had the chance to go up to the Sea of Galilee, had the chance to travel to Bethlehem. I've now been to many sites in Judea and Samaria. These are foundational to understanding the walk of Jesus and the history of this place. And so as we study, now you get a chance to go walk in the tunnels where Jesus walked, now that this has been excavated, right? That lead up to the Temple Mount.
You mean the pilgrimage road?
Yes, the pilgrimage road. This is stone. This is real. This is not, to your point earlier, this is not fiction. This is inescapable fact. No matter what any Palestinian wants to describe, these are places that match the book, and they teach us that history. And I always think for every nation and for every civilization, you can't move forward without understanding the foundation upon which your people are built. And so Jerusalem is central to each of these faiths, and we all ought to both honor our own tradition and provide space for the other faiths to practice theirs. This is a special place. There is room for all. There's nothing in the world quite like being and walking on this very foundations of this historic understanding of who we are.
So I want to conclude, Mr. Secretary, not only by thanking you from the bottom of my heart for taking out time from your very busy schedule for talking about this very special subject with me, but also to state that in just a couple of days, we'll be celebrating the Jewish holiday of Sukkot, or Tabernacles, which is the harvest festival of the land of Israel. And I think it's Benjamin Disraeli, another great statesman, who in his novel Tancred describes how striking it is that Jews throughout history mark their connection to the land of Israel by celebrating this holiday, even as they were exiled all around the world. And he says something like, a people that refuses to forget their vintage will one day reclaim their vintage. And so I want to say in that spirit that sitting in my own sukkah in New York City, I'm going to uncork a bottle of Psagot Pompeo and think of you and celebrate all that you have said to me today. So thank you so much, and hope to see you in person again very soon.
Thank you. We'll be together before too long. Bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Mr. Secretary.